Hi, and welcome to the Rolla Public Library. I'm Tara, one of the employees here. And the library is more than just a place where you can get books. We see ourselves as a community center where you can meet authors, come and do art, and participate in other programs, such as this summer, we're going to be celebrating Missouri's bicentennial, where you'll have uh, virtual programs you can attend to meet other authors as well as historians. And we'll also have family programming this summer with the summer reading program Tales and Tales. And today we have with us Rosemary Kinder, author of her current book, A Common Person and Other Stories. Thank you for being with us today, Rosemary.
Thank you.
And let me tell you a little bit about our author today. Rosemary Kinder is originally from Southeast Missouri, the Crowley's Ridge area, specifically Bloomfield in Stoddard County. She attended 1 year at Southeast Missouri State University, my alma mater, and completed her BA, MFA, and PhD at the University of Arizona, Tucson, where she graduated a member of Phi Kappa Phi and Phi Beta Kappa. From 89 to 2002, she was a professor of English at the University of Central Missouri. And she taught literature with an emphasis on women writers in the US and worldwide and creative writing. And she was the coordinator of creative writing, the editor of the Pleiades Literary Journal, and established the Pleiades Press. All right, and her fifth book is A Common Person and Other Stories, which was featured on the homepage, which is featured on her homepage. Um, and it was featured by the University of Notre Dame Press as part of their Richard Sullivan Prize in Short Fiction series. So, again, thank you, Rosemary, for being here and reading from your short stories today.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you I want you to thank Allie and Tara and anyone that helped set this up and help promote it. I also want to thank those of you who came today, or all of you who came today. We're a short, but I hope very good crew. And I'm going to take a different approach today. Well, it's not totally different. The collection has 17 stories in it. And I've learned that it is a little unusual in that I don't have a common narrator, I don't have a common setting, and I don't have, uh, each story is different, very different. And so what I thought I would do is read a little bit from stories that I haven't read from yet, or read a section that hasn't been read, so that it will be new to me in a way and new to you too. I thought if anyone had a section that they wanted to hear read aloud, I would read that aloud. So if you have one because you've looked at the book, then at the pause you can say, well, would you read from this? Sometimes I want to hear what the writer's voice sounds like in a certain passage, but I'm perfectly prepared to read without anybody asking me for one. This first story I'm gonna read from is really about bullying. It's one of the topics I write about quite a bit, and it's bullying that gets out of hand. And it's from the story called The Little Garden. There are really three or four young men living together, and the three that your voices that you may hear are David, Jonathan, and Carl, who really owns the place they live. In the upstairs bathroom, David stepped from the shower. He was a striking young man, slender, fine boned, with broad shoulders and lean muscles. He dried and glanced twice at the sink, as if it troubled him. Something was out of place, a reflection of black in the white porcelain. The bathroom window was open, screenless. A magnolia tree blossomed lavender and opulent right in the window. Something could have slithered in. He wanted to inch backward toward the door, but he couldn't. That's what always happened in these situations. He was as solid on the floor as a column of marble. Around him, the steam gradually dissipated. The blue flowered wallpaper took on sharper tones. All time had stopped.
You've muted yourself, Rosemary.
Oh, sorry. That might have been me. Hold on. Sorry, Rosemary. I was trying to mute the other tennis, accidentally muted you. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Now, what should I do? Start all over?
You're more than welcome to, and everyone, I'm so sorry about that.
Did you hear any of the story?
The part where I got out of the shower and he was at the sink.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
The door opened and his roommate Jonathan ambled in, not quite naturally. He grinned, reached toward the sink, screeched, "Snake," and simultaneously flung something upward. A black curve arced up, then hit the glass door of the shower and fell languidly, falsely at David's feet. It was rubber. "Got you, buddy. That makes 5 times this semester." When David still didn't move, Jonathan tossed a towel on the rubber snake, then gripped David's shoulders, turned him around, and pushed him toward the hall. "I kept waiting for the scream," he said. "I decided you were never going to see it, so I had to help get things started." "I saw it. You know, if you'd scream, you probably wouldn't be so afraid." "I'm not afraid. I'm frozen." "Same thing. I don't think so. You'll never make it camping." Jonathan went back in the bathroom, retrieved the snake. He waved it toward David as he passed. "Maybe you should stay home and let me take that girl you found." "What was her name? Becky, sweet Becky?" "I like camping." Downstairs, Carl looked at the rubber snake and said, "You asshole," and returned to the newspaper. Jonathan put the snake in a plastic bag in the closet and sat back down at the piano. He ripped into Up on Cripple Creek, then Rag Mama Rag. He stopped for a drink. "It's a good thing we're not at war," he said. "That kid'd do us no good at all." Not all wars are in jungle terrain. They have been lately. When David came down, Carl was out running and Jonathan was still at the piano. "You know I'm trying to help you, don't you?" Jonathan said. David turned toward the kitchen. "Yeah, I know." Jonathan started another tune and muttered, "You got to get over this, my man." When he stopped playing, he saw the water ring left by the beer can, wiped it with his shirt tail, and drained the beer. Then he went to see what David was doing. And they do go camping, and there are more snakes. This next one I'm going to read from is called Signs. And this is a story that has actually 3 points of view. William, who is a young guy that's very enamored of a neighbor that he would like to get to know, a woman. And Lily is that young woman. She has 3 dogs. And there is a trucker that's going to converge on this. And he's sort of an evangelical sinner type, you know, hearty in his love for God and for women and food and everything else. So they're going to come together. And what I'm really writing about is that sense you have that everything is a pattern, planned, and it's going to converge, and you feel like you know that or you experienced it. So this is just one passage from that story called Signs. Lily woke up slowly, her body unhappy, as if she had binged on syrup. The sunlight on the window pane was too rich a yellow, and she remembered, briefly and vaguely, that an eclipse was occurring sometime soon, maybe today. Whether it was solar or lunar, she couldn't recall. Nor the time, but she thought its approach might explain the odd color of the sunlight and the heavy, sweet lethargy she herself was experiencing. After rising, her first act was to flick on the computer and let the impersonal, star-studded black fill the screen. She liked floating stars, fake or not. Then she opened a blank document and was rewarded with the immediate, lively appearance of the little paperclip icon. "You are adorable," she said. And as if hearing her, he leaned forward, his thick black brows raised expectantly, pleasantly, repeatedly. "Yes, madam." the movement suggested. Yes, madam, anything. She blew him a kiss. He was ever ready to please. I bet in your off time, she said, you hang around with pliers. The brows lifted. Her timing had been perfect. She was delighted with herself. From the back porch area came the thumpy rustling of her 3 dogs. When I'm ready, she called. One of them whined. She fed them scrambled eggs with dry dog food and shooed them from deck to yard, but they wanted her. I have to work, she said. I earn our living, remember? She delayed a few more moments, stealing onto the front porch so her creatures would not hear her. She sat down and pressed her feet into grass. A person could ache to death from this intensity. From where in heaven did the feeling come? That's the beginning of the story. There's also a dog named Delilah, who's a stray dog and sort of mean. Okay, this next one I'm going to read from more easily because I don't see anyone that I think it might offend. It's a story where I'm sort of experimenting with mangled points of view, mangled minds. Alvy and the Rapist is the title. And the rapist's point of view will be seen or will be learned, and so will Alvy's. Neither of them think the way any of us think, I believe. And there will be a psychiatrist trying to come at the truth from 2 different realities. And I'm just going to read the very first beginning, the beginning. I'm going to read the beginning. Alvy and the Rapist. Alvy had always been a storyteller, though she didn't always tell the stories aloud. And the Rapist had always been a rapist, though he didn't attack a woman until he was 16. Alvy began telling stories to most everyone when she was 17, by which time she had difficulty distinguishing between dreams and doings. The Rapist killed his first woman the month he turned 21, quite by accident. He clipped her chin, but somehow her nose too, and some kind of bone pierced her brain. The Rapist lived 2 blocks south of Alvy, but he didn't know her. He saw her, though, off and on for some years, when she took to coming home late at night, strolling or scurrying or sauntering along the straight-lit walk. He would squint dark eyes through the parting of his lace curtains and narrow up the very sight of her. Oblivious to window eyes, Alvy fought and won battles in the twilight and the dark light hours. I felt like God was in the top of the tree, Alvy told her doctor. And what made you think that? I guess it was the moon sort of stabbed on a branch, and I thought it was God. Actually, Alvy, you know it wasn't God, don't you? And that the moon wasn't stabbed. But it's a lovely image, isn't it? Stabbing the moon, impaling God on a tree in the dark of the moon. Yes, it is lovely. You should write, Alvy, as I've told you before. No, I shouldn't, because people might find it and keep it. And then what would happen? Terrible things. What? I couldn't change the ending. And it goes on. Everybody has more parts. The next one I'm going to read from is a very sad little story called A Fragile Life. And it is something many people experience. It is a mother going through an unfriendly divorce and dealing with a very angry child. And she buys a parakeet that she doesn't know how to take care of just to bring joy into the house and something bright and new. And I'm going to read a passage from that. She loved the parakeet, his tiny sounds, his bright flits of joy, his upside down peering into the mirror. He was obsessed with the mirror, and she considered removing it. Instead, she hung a miniature bell at the top of the perch. A present for you, she said. She didn't understand his eating habits. He strewed a few seeds. Some were always on the paper, even the floor beneath, but he didn't empty the dish, just like a human child, picky and temperamental. Amelia, she said toward him, enunciating clearly the syllables of her name. Amelia. She gave him a red thimble, and in a day's time he delighted her by rasping it against the bars. Buying him had been the most foresighted act she could have taken, because everything else in her life turned ugly. Nick threatened to leave his job and leave the state rather than pay much child support. You earn as much as I do, he accused over the phone, and I'm letting you have the house. That puts you way ahead of me. This isn't a one-upmanship situation, she countered. This is our daughter's life we're discussing. It's your life. I've got bills too. What bills? School clothes, books, dentist. If you leave the state, Nick, I can follow you. You have to work. There are ways around regulations. I don't have to have a well-paying job just so you can get more. If you want to fight, have at me. He hung up. She lied about him to Mariana. Your dad's so busy, honey. And if he did come by here, he would be even sadder. It would remind him of what he's losing. Then he should come home. He should never have left us. He didn't leave me. Amelia felt that like a blow to her own heart. But what could she do? Tell her sweet child that her father was a selfish, conniving bastard? Don't blame me, hon, she said, and hugged the resistant little body. Please don't blame me. I'm going outside. Mariana stepped clear and with her new walk, that odd march, crossed the kitchen and dining room and went out the patio door. She left it open as usual, and Amelia slid it closed. Everything about Mariana seemed new, strange. She didn't play, she waited. Now she walked along the low retaining wall to the corner of the yard, where the wall was higher, holding firmly a magnolia tree. She maneuvered the extra 2 feet nimbly and sat beneath the tree from where, Amelia understood, could be seen the first turn onto the street, the direction from which her father used to arrive. Hope, the sustenance of children. Okay. This next one, I forgot to turn my timer on. So if someone could start acting nervous or something when I'm about 2 minutes from 20 minutes.
Sure. I've been keeping an eye on the time for you.
Okay, thank you.
We've got about 3 minutes or so.
Okay. I'm going to read from Bay at the Moon. This was published in Big Muddy down at SEMO and their magazine. And it's when I still felt free to call it the boot heel before somebody told me that they're the boot heel. They're under the ridge of the boot, top of the boot. But actually I was raised in the boot heel. Language changes, but the land is the land, you know. So this is Bay at the Moon, just the beginning. And I mentioned trees too many times. For those of you who are writers, you realize how frustrating it is to see something in print and then count how many times you used a certain word. This is one of those. Bay at the Moon. Evans had always liked the Missouri boot heel and often wished he had been reared there. In just a few miles, the landscape could change quickly from flat cotton land to rolling hills with rich black soil, then to low swampland, stretches of water with skeleton trees like old soldiers at attention, then to flatland again. Sometimes, returning to the city after a circuit court hearing, he would linger in one of the small towns. He would eat in a local restaurant, read the newspaper, if there was one, and he would listen. He liked the boot heel vernacular and the way the locals guarded their stories by telling them piecemeal. Catch this, they might be saying, as if everyday life were an important riddle. Now, at the second dirt road of Aquila Junction, Evans turned west, and the landmarks he had heard about became real. A barbed wire fence, a cattle crossing, a lightning-struck tree, more barbed wire, then dense trees, still denser, and a road that forked deceptively, since both branches would lead to the same house. He took the right branch. Trees crowded the road from both sides and flickered waning sunlight across the windshield. He could see small birds flitting, a hawk gliding in the distant sky, but the early evening felt silent. According to the story, the woman of the house, Lorena Welker, had been found on a lane behind her home, wearing a full-length cotton nightgown, her long black hair pulled back and tied with a yellow ribbon. She lay on her stomach, face to the side and hands drawn up. Near her, a slight depression held rainwater from earlier in the week. The cause of death was not a mystery. An inherited weak heart had claimed her, though she wasn't much past 40. The mystery was the sight. Why was she outside in a nightgown? And why walking away from the house? That was an actual incident that happened. And as far as I know, they never knew what happened, but I wrote what could have happened. All right.
Well, that story left me wanting to know more about.
I hope they all do.
Right, and that's just like the Boot Hill too. It really is, with the way it was so flat, where they've cut all the trees and made the fields, and then you start getting back into the natural rolling in the trees again.
Is it time for me to stop, Tara?
Oh, if you'd like to, but I'm enjoying listening. Does anybody?
No, that's fine. I didn't know if it's time for me to, because I don't have a timer, see, so I can stop right now. I was going to read, I want to read one more paragraph.
Oh, very good.
I'm going to do that, and that'll be the ending thing. I want to read, I've read at different times the story, the last story, the stuff of ballads about a grand passion. And I've talked a little bit about that. I just want to read a fight that they have. This couple. Here you go. The couple fought. She had hit him with a pan, thrown chili into his face, kicked him in the groin, and once had taken his banjo out into the rain. She had laid it in the yard, screaming at the top of her lungs. He threatened to kill her. Neighbors had called the police. Another time he had locked her out of his dingy rented shack because he had to practice and he wasn't going to argue anymore. She wouldn't go home. She banged on the door, kicked it, banged on all the windows, broke one, and then got into his car and leaned on the horn until he himself called the cops. But if they touched each other, even stood close, they were together. The banjo player and his lady were magic, fire, waves, dreams, and unending longing. I just wanted to end it with romance.
That was a cute, sharp pain that crowded out the background of anxiety. Okay, and what's up with dyeing your hair? Because you've had lots of different.
What was that?
I don't know. That was very strange.
It was very, very strange.
I was
See, I told you in that story Signs. These things happen.
I really understand the title of your collection now, because I felt like with the majority of those stories, I feel like I've seen that or heard snippets of those stories in daily life before from people, everywhere. And I could really tell the time period sometimes too. And you didn't have to say, oh, it's the 60s and 70s, or, oh, now we're in the 90s. Because I in the first story, you mentioned you were talking about fighting in the jungle, and the vernacular the characters use really set it in that time period. And then when you had the woman with the dogs who logged onto her computer, I remember Clippy, the paper clip from Windows in the 90s. So I love how you captured the feel of those eras without necessarily having to give a date. That was so creative. And
that paperclip icon was one of my favorite things about a computer. I didn't like very many things, but I liked that little whatever it was. So I'd be happy to answer questions if any of you have any.
I have one, and it's from this. I've already passed my book on to a friend of mine who wanted it. So I'm remembering a story called Mother Post. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So I know you have worked in the Historical Society in Johnson County for a long time, as you know, archiving and whatever. And that story seemed just right out of some archives, something that really happened in a strange little town like Warrensburg. So I'm wondering if it really is based on something that you came across in the archives, and I'm wondering if anyone in your group that you jam with, your music group, if they ever really did a ballad of that story.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. You asked very good questions, Janice. This one, though, was not in the archives, but in my own life. The person that it was my mother whose home, she woke up one morning and there was a mailbox out in the easement between the highway and the house. And so because of that, I learned some of the regulations, and so did my brother. My brother tried writing the mayor. He tried everything. I talked to postal authorities about it. My mother just kept her. She's not Willa, by the way. My mother is not Willa. And she kept her good graces. She did talk to the people uptown. She would like to have had it moved, but she wouldn't buck the system. And so what I was really writing about there was a variety of things, actually, more than one thing. One was that feeling you have when what you have is no longer totally yours. Someone else can come in, the government or someone can come in, and it's never the same after that. Another thing, though, was the way violence is something that stirs up a community. Something that stirs up a community causes little dribbles of bad. People release things. It's like, I don't know, it's not like just group man where a bunch of people together suddenly can feel like they can kill somebody or anything. It's just something's percolating, and it's part of the reality of the way we live, and it's everywhere right now, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But there, it was just in a small town with a mailbox, and none of those things that I know, I don't think they really happened. But it did cause a lot of consternation because it wasn't right. It wasn't right to her, but it was right to the woman who could not get her mail anywhere else. But it surely the person whose properties it's going to front should have some say in where it goes that they don't. So I'm glad it seems like from the old time, because that establishes a great authority, Janice. Thanks.
And Chanda, did I say your name right?
Chanda, yeah.
Chanda, I apologize. Did you have a question too you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I did. And sorry, but the cats have joined us if you've seen things running through my screen. I can't get them all locked up. I don't have enough rooms. One of the things I've always wondered is, and it's not directly related to this particular collection, but I'd like to know the answer, is that, you know, when did you actually gravitate towards writing? Because I don't know, did you start out being a voracious reader when you were younger? And when did you start writing stories? Because I know that you earned your PhD a little later in life, and in the writing field and began teaching. And so when did you really start seriously working on your writing and your whole I'm trying to think of the word, body of work, let's say?
Well, I still have what I consider my body of work that started when I was in grade school. So
okay.
I wrote poems then and little ballads about animals and a lot of Christian poems. A lot of one was chosen for one of the high school anthologies. And one of the sad stories when I was younger was that a girlfriend of mine didn't want to write any work for an assignment. And so I wrote hers, and she won a prize, and she wouldn't tell him that I wrote it, which really bothered me. But when I was in high school and I was in the Beta Club, I wrote plays for I wrote a science fiction beta club play that I'm embarrassed. I hope it isn't on record anywhere. It's just terrible. I wrote something almost all the time. And when I first got married, I was working as a secretary for a prosecuting attorney in Stoddard County. And on my lunch hour, I tried to write a romance mystery about a woman who was bequeathed a red ruby ring. I never could make anything out of that. And when I went back to school, I went back to get a certification to teach. And meanwhile, I was still trying to write books. And a woman named Sue, I can't think of her last name right now. I wish I could. She told me I belonged in creative writing. And so that was like 1970 or 75, something like that. And she steered me in the right way. Well, we can't say it's the right way, but she steered me in the way I've come, and I've been very happy with it. So actually I've been writing, and now I'm wanting to write romances and ghost stories. That never left. That desire to write that kind of thing never left. I just got trained into an area.
There's a whole genre of paranormal romance if you want to write ghost romance stories.
I know, I have friends who do write that. I have a friend who writes under a pseudonym, paranormal, which hers are very sexual, but she is top notch and making a fortune at it. So there's an audience there, but I just want to write about ghosts. I don't want them to get intimate with each other. Any more questions?
Well, I have another writing question, but somebody else should go ahead. Mary, you do. You go ahead, because I've already had one.
Thank you. Mine's not a question, but a comment. But before I get to the comment, an apology. I'm writing at my desk and I turned this on and I forgot to close the closet door behind me. Usually I don't look quite such a mess when I'm on Zoom, so I do apologize because everybody else looks really nice.
I didn't think of it. Yeah, all right.
But I have two comments. Rosemary said that the book wasn't connected, but it's very much connected. It's connected by two things I see. And first is animals, the relation of humans to animals. The fact that animals save people, you know, the dogs and the parakeets, and then the people return the favor and save the animals. And I think there's this wonderful connection. But even more than that, I'm struck by something that I heard Rosemary talk about once, the sense of community. The people in these stories are very much a part of their neighborhoods. They notice what's going on in the other houses, in the streets, down the block. They sort of watch each other not in a creepy way. Well, I mean, in a few stories in kind of a creepy way, but usually not, just because this is their world. And I just love that. It's a very comforting feeling, even for the spooky stories in here. And I just admire that a lot. So I wanted to say it.
Well, I loved it. Community is one of the biggest, most important things to me. So I'm glad it comes through. So.
Yeah,
Janice, you had one more, did you?
Does anybody else have one? Anne, do you? I love your hat, by the way.
I love all of
Thank
the
you.
hats.
I'm late because I just got here from court. Do you find that being a musician helps engender more creativity in your writing?
It makes me very aware, I think, of language. I'm very sound oriented anyhow. I hear dialogues and I hear sounds far more than I notice decor, for example. And for me to write descriptions, I have to really concentrate on this and what did that look like? But I hear sounds. And in my writing, I've answered this question, I think, in an interview recently.
Mm-hmm.
I get so caught up in sounds, I can lose the sense of what I'm writing. And then music comes in and out of my stories from musicians or some song I've heard, or even the way an animal howls can be musical. Some of them have the most beautiful howl and some don't, you know, they're boring. But yeah, I can't not be aware of music. Like John, that guy playing the piano and leaving a ring on the water ring on the piano. And anyhow, I love your questions about all of the questions. So
Everyone's questions have been so wonderful, and since you mentioned music, that had me thinking. Now, Rosemary, you play quite a few instruments, don't you? A little bit of ukulele, the mandolin. Let's see, what else did I have? The bass guitar. Did I get that right?
no, it's a bass. It's a
Acoustic bass?
stand-up bass, acoustic bass.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, I think they call it bass fiddle,
And so
doghouse bass.
having that variety kind of makes me think of short stories too, because each instrument has a unique voice and way you play it. And then all your characters in your different stories seem to have a different voice of their own that you really capture uniquely in their own kind of rhythm and pace.
Right, and even the same fiddle. If you own 7 fiddles, every one of them will sound different. And you'll know which one which one they're playing from the sound of it. And I just love all this. I keep hearing an echo. It must be in my own sound system.
Oh, I can mute. Maybe that'll help.
Oh, that's all right. Well, any more?
I saw in the chat, Holly, who is here with us today, mentioned you play violin as well.
Well, I'm a bad fiddler. I made up my mind that I wanted to be a fiddler enough that I didn't mind if a bad fiddler was all I could be. And that is all I can be. And I was showing a dear friend once what I had learned, Hal Sappington, who was a marvelous fiddler. I said, let me play a song for you. And I played, and he said, well, you can always play for your own pleasure. Which I knew. That's okay.
There was another chat that you might want to read.
Yes, okay. Let me pull that up again. Oh, this is from Christine. I am so happy to see a library program reading. It is perfect. I'm in a library too. Hello.
Is she still here?
Have to go back to work, she says.
Oh, yeah, she had to go back.
Well, I have a quick question, Rosemary. You mentioned in one of your readings that you might go back and you might bring all of your stories and everything together in one book. I think that was kind of the way you inferred that what you were interested in doing. But I also want to kind of comment on what Mary said. I feel like you could go back to this short story collection and you could continue every story. And in fact, I really wanted you to, in several of them that you read from today. I don't remember ever feeling that. Well, I don't remember feeling that way with that many short story collections.
Oh, well, thank you. What I really wanted to do was have a sense that I haven't just been an erratic writer, that I want that it all ties together somehow. And so since I do want to write sort of the supernatural, or I do want to do that. And I have characters that are set in Tucson, and I have most of my characters are in Missouri. But if one of them appears, and this happens, like a guitar player that I met in Tucson originally was from Missouri. And the fiddler that I met in Tucson was living in Missouri when I came back here. I mean, the world is little. And so what I do is I do take a character from that story and I put him in this novel. And I do that kind of thing. And in my mind, I am creating a universe. I would like to be able to do that in literature. I don't think I have the talent, but I'm going to try. Even a ghost story. A ghost couldn't inhabit a house that's in Bloomfield, Missouri. But not only do I want to do that, but well, now I forgot where I was going with that. So I'll just leave it there because I don't need to keep talking anyhow.
You were talking about the beautiful synchronicity within your stories and how you have your your own world for the
Oh,
different.
I do know what it made me think of. It wasn't related to literature. I read about an artist who made paintings, statues, all sorts of things. And he owned a lot of acreage. And what he did was he peopled his acreage with creatures from his imagination. Animals he carved, things he painted, ceramic things. So when you walked on his land, it was his mind creatures. And I would like to do that with my stories and my book, to have it whole. And I would call it, what I meant by an open novel, it's not one book that is the open novel. It is all of them together as an open novel. It's harder to just to explain if you try to write it.
Well, there's quite a few authors who do that. One of them most notably is Stephen King. Quite a few of his characters pop up in other books because all of his books take place in
Right.
um,
Well,
one-
Faulkner, yeah, it's Faulkner was my author, and he created a county. He wrote everything about the people, the language, the history, the generations of different families. But see, I moved from here to the Southwest and back here. I have a broader, maybe I don't really have a broader expanse, but I feel like I'm more out of control. So I'm bringing it back in. I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed this. It has been intimate and absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I thank every one of you.
And you're an excellent facilitator. I didn't catch your name, but you're really good at it.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Tara. I'm one of the library clerks here at the Rolla Public Library. Normally, I do children's programming, so a lot of people know me as Miss Tara. I tell stories. We used to do it in person, and a lot of our stuff is virtual now. And so we're so glad because it's given us an opportunity to reach out to more authors such as Rosemary and have them join us to read, and we can ask questions and learn more about them. And in fact, if anybody has any authors, we're recording this for later, so for people now and who watch later, if you have any authors you're interested in us having at the library, please let us know. You can send us a message at Rolla Public Library on our website or Facebook or YouTube, where all of our past programming, or most of our past programming, as well as this one, will be available. And I want everyone to know we will be ordering Rosemary's book, A Common Person and Other Stories. So if you would like to be put on the waiting list for that, you can contact us also at the library, or you can send me a message in the Zoom chat and I'll write your name down.
Okay.
All right. Was there anything you would like to close with?
Well, I think I said it. I love you all. You're a wonderful community. You've enriched my life. And this is probably my last Zoom appearance. And so I'm so glad I blew you all a kiss.
Well, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Tara.
You're very welcome. And I hope everyone has a blessed day and enjoy reading. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for setting it up.
Oh, yes, I will
Thank you.
definitely let Rebecca and Allie know.